Hi there and welcome to the Tour Guide's Travel Guide. I'm Rich Jones, professional tour guide and obviously completely trustworthy. Today we're going to explore the beautiful and picturesque city of Chester here in the County of Cheshire, northwest England, in fact just on the borders of North Wales. It is quite simply the most complete and best preserved medieval and Roman town wall system in Britain. It was built between AD 70 and 80 by the Roman Emperor Vespasian as a castrum or fortification for his elite 20th Legion, Deva Vectrix, and it was one of the three original major fortifications here in Britannia. Because Deva, Chester, was so large, it was considered to be possibly earmarked to be the capital of Britain rather than Londinium. Now, it stayed in Roman hands till around about 410 AD. This is the major date when the Romans essentially left Britain to go back and protect their crumbling Roman Empire. So let's go and explore this remarkable place, our way, the Tour Guide's Travel Guide way. Let's go. Alright, so as we've just parked adjacent to the Roodee car park here in the free bathrooms, this seems like a logical place to start the tour actually, just outside this beautiful 17th and 18th century county hall and part of the University of Chester. So it's a start and a finish point really, because obviously we'll be heading back this way. Kind of makes sense really, don't you think? So here we've got, as I say, beautiful Palladian architecture here at the county hall. Away in the corner, it could be worth a visit in the summer months, is the, just make out in the sunlight there, is the Agricola's Tower. It's the original Roman gateway to the city of Chester. As I say, part of the University of Chester over here. Fine building away to my right, which is very much worth a visit. It is the Cheshire Regiment Military Museum, commemorating the four major Cheshire regiments: the 22nd Cheshire Regiment, the 5th Inniskilling Dragoon Guards, the Cheshire Yeomanry and the 3rd Carabiniers. But now all sort of merged under the Mercian Regiment. But here's a fine statue, in fact, right here, quite interesting, of the great Queen Victoria, that was erected in 1903, 2 years after her death, as from a grateful city of Chester. And quite interesting crests on there. You've got the royal crest, right, the royal standard right in the front there, the lion and the unicorn, and the Lions of England, the Rampant of Scotland and the Harp of Ireland. And of course over here in the sunlight you've got the crest of Cheshire, the Wheat Chiefs of Cheshire. On the other side, I mean, you can come and have a look at that later on, is Victoria's own crest, and on the other side is the city of Chester's crest. So fine statue indeed outside the county hall here in Chester, starting point of your walking tour. Let's go. Right, so we've moved closer into town now. We've come up from County Hall, up Grosvenor Street, and found ourselves at the junction of Bridge Street, outside the Chester History and Heritage Centre. What we're now going to do is swing left into Bridge Street and start really exploring the heart of Chester. Right, so this is nice. We're on Bridge Street now. Look at this beautiful timbered buildings here, very interesting indeed up here. From the top you'll see a statue looking somewhat regal. That is in fact the King, Charles I. Now if you have a good look at him, you'll notice he's somewhat out of proportion. The story is that he was too big to go into that gap, so they had to like cut his legs off to fit him in there. Now below you'll see "To God, my King and my country." Just above it you'll see different wooden friezes there, things from the Bible, sort of Cain and Abel, Jeremiah. What else you got in there? Joseph and his mistress indeed. Now, coming back this way, you're going to see right above us here the three old arches. And there's a date there, 1274 AD. That is supposed to be the oldest shop frontage in Britain. Right there. I can't think of any older myself. So, now we're going to head a little bit further up Bridge Street. Some more cool stuff to see. Let's do it. Alright, a little further up Bridge Street on the left hand side, I really wanted to point this out to you actually, it's fantastic. The Dutch house, as it's called, the Dutch buildings, very typical style. 3 gables at the top there, and look down at those beautiful twisted columns there. Screaming Dutch architecture, dates from the 17th century, sort of mid 1600s. But more interesting, look, these covered walkways that is just atypical of this beautiful city of Chester called the Rose, these covered shopping arcades. So now we're going to get into those a bit more later on. So up to the top of Bridge Street, once called Via Praetoria in Roman times. We actually found ourselves here at the Market Cross. distinctive style here in Chester, kind of the focal point of the city really. It's called a lantern cross. The market cross, back in medieval times, the central market here, goods bought and sold. Here's the thing about the market cross: if you sold products or bought products underneath the cross, it was seen as sanctioned by God, so therefore it was perfectly legal. So the market cross here in the centre of Chester. In the summer months, the Town Crier will stand upon here and call out the daily news. Unfortunately, he's not here at the moment. He's away skiing in Austria as we speak. So moving around the corner from the market cross behind us, we turn left into Northgate Street, and quite interesting this actually. We get ready to pan down the street. We've got three very distinctive styles of architecture: the corner St Peter of the Cross Church and this distinctive Chester red Cooper sandstone. We're seeing a lot of that today, I can tell you. The Skipton Building Society in the distinctive 18th century Georgian style, and then of course what also Chester's famous for, these beautiful black and white Tudor timbered, or mock Tudor in this particular occasion, Chester style. But actually very favourite little corner actually. If you look up above there, you'll be able to see carved into the buildings wooden statues, and one in particular here you've got right there, look like a knight in armour. That's a man called Hugh Lupus, or Hugh the Fat. He was the first Earl of Chester. In fact, I think he was grandson, or was he nephew, of William the Conqueror. The other two that are further down, a bit difficult to pan into, but you've got St Crispin portrayed here. He's the patron saint of the shoemakers, and in fact back in the day these were all kind of where the shoemakers' shops and stalls. And a little further down you'll notice, if you're coming up this way, a lady is Justitia, who is the Roman goddess for justice. So the three statues: Justitia, St Crispin and Hugh the Fat. A little further up Northgate Street, found a corner here, more interesting stuff. Now, a lot of these black and white timbered buildings are not original Jacobean. In fact, a lot of these were rebuilt in the beginning of the 20th century. You can probably see 1902, this section. Interesting things here. We've got some carved out figures again, and these are the Chester minstrels. Now, the story behind the Chester minstrels is we've got to go way back, and once upon a time the Welsh had invaded and captured Rutland Castle, not too far from here, just over the border. Now, the Earl of Chester had a very small standing army, in fact not enough to go and combat them. So what he did, the legend has it, that he recruited all the minstrels and all the instruments to head on down to Rutland Castle to make such a racket that the Welsh were scared off. So that's kind of the legend of the Chester minstrels. At the top there we can see the king looking down. There's this quite a distinctive figure, ties him with the date 1902. Inherited the throne after the death of his mother, Queen Victoria. That is Edward VII. And then just down below us we've got a little section there. It says, "The profit of the earth is for all. The king himself is served from the field," meaning that the king and he couldn't look after his estates without the farmers and the common people and the tillage. So there you go, corner of Northgate Street, King Edward VII. And so continuing on to Northgate Street, we're outside the Tourist Information Centre, but I want to point out the statue first and foremost. Beautiful actually. It commemorates just Chester as a city as a whole, and its walls protecting it and giving people the freedom to work and worship inside this beautiful city. So, tourist information. There's a guy in there called Mike who's a top fella actually, will answer all your questions. Real mine of information. It's alongside the town hall, which is Victorian Gothic, and it's stylised on a French chateau. And if we get to the top, you'll notice the clock there was installed recently to commemorate the 1900th anniversary of the city of Chester. And we're here, say, on Northgate Street, and just adjacent to St Werburgh's, or what was called St Werburgh's Cathedral, which we'll be visiting later on. I couldn't walk past without pointing this out. Look at that beautiful archway, medieval. Really points out in clarity there this beautiful Cooper sandstone that Chester's built from. Really beautiful rose-coloured sandstone. So as we're progressing up Northgate Street, we're going to go past this exquisite building. It's now Chester Library, but you can see above the frieze at the top there is actually the Chester Motorworks and Coach Company. Beautiful terracotta buildings. We're actually going to head on up now to the top of Northgate Street, past the original 15th, 16th century coaching inns, the Pied Bull, the Bluebell, coach and horses, and we're actually going to climb up onto the walls and actually start our walls tour from this point. So heading to the top of Northgate Street. Right, so we've now climbed up onto the walls at the North Gate. Now this is where I'm going to start the walking tour of Chester walls, but behind me we've got views off in the distance. Actually looks like rain's coming in, but you see off the distance the hills of Wales now, isn't it? Right over there. Now, as we're panning around here up on Northgate, There's a little lockkeeper's cottage here, but you might be able to notice on top of the chimney pots, not a lot of people notice that, but you've got a ratty in the middle chimney pot chasing what looks like a fish, leaping salmon there. Not quite sure the origins of that, but it's kind of quirky, you might want to notice it. However, my suspicions is it possibly got something to do with fishing and the port, because once upon a time, a long time ago, and we'll see this later on, Chester was the major Roman port up here in the northwest of England. But so behind me, panning down the walls, heading down towards Watergate. But what we're going to do is we're going to go clockwise. Makes sense, believe me, trust me on this one. We're going to head down, round the back, and the first stop is going to be King Charles Tower. So continuing along the walls, now before we get into the next stage, I just want to point out that the wall tour is fantastic. It's about, well, it's just shy of about 2 miles all the way around, so you kind of want to factor in your time frame there. About an hour, I would say, but if you wanted to stop off, hop on, hop off the walls, stop off and see the really cool stuff, maybe factor in 2.5, just for your information. But next stop along here is what's called King Charles Tower. Now originally it was a medieval watchtower, and it was originally used by the Guild of Painters as a meeting place. And if you look above the door, you'll be able to see the phoenix rising from the ashes. That was the emblem of the Painters Guild. But it was here on the 24th of September 1645 that King Charles watched his royalist army getting absolutely slaughtered by Oliver Cromwell's parliamentarian troops just out at Roughton Moor, just a few miles out of town. So we're watching from that window up there on the September 24th, 1645. So continuing our progress, we've moved down from King Charles Tower past the back of the cathedral, so we're going to be in that one later on, but we've arrived over the Eastgate, and probably one of Chester's most famous landmarks, the Eastgate clock. The second most photographed clock in the country, I believe, aside from Big Ben in London. It was erected in 1897, you can see there, to dedicate the Jubilee of Queen Victoria, but absolutely beautifully sit on 4 sides, and you'll see that when you get down actually onto Eastgate proper itself, so the Eastgate clock. Okay, so we've arrived at Newgate. Now actually what we're going to do is we're going to dive off the walls momentarily, not literally, obviously we're going to climb downstairs, probably the most sensible thing, to have a look at the Roman gardens just down below us, but most importantly the amphitheatre, the largest Roman amphitheatre in Britain, again proving the point, the importance that Chester was to Vespasian and the 20th Legion. So just down below us, the Roman amphitheatre off Newgate. So I've been paying my respects and worshipping at the altar here of Dea Nemesi, the goddess Nemesis, the actually Greek goddess of retribution. So stepping out now into the amphitheatre proper. Wow, my word, huge. It seated approximately 7,000 spectators. Gladiatorial battles going on here with the wild animals and all sorts of stuff back in the day. This would have been the focal social point of Diva, the city of Chester. Again, to repeat, proving the importance of Chester to the Roman Empire. Again, to repeat, considered possibly once marked out as the capital of England. I think the reason behind that was that once upon a time it was in the plans for the Romans to invade Ireland, just across the Irish Sea from here. The port here, Roman, very, very important indeed. So why was such a fortification built? Why was the elite Roman legion here? And what changed their minds when they decided not to invade Ireland after all? I think because there was very little mineral wealth over there. But again, this is the amphitheatre, 7,000 seat capacity, absolutely remarkable. And out of the amphitheatre we've stepped, we can see the kids in the distance getting a proper history lesson, Roman history lesson from a centurion over there. You'll see a lot of that wandering about. I remember doing that as a kid myself actually many years ago. But we're outside now the St John the Baptist Church, very nice indeed, well worth a visit actually. Interesting when you actually go inside it, you'll see the original 4 columns, gives the impression of once upon a time a much, much larger building. You'll see the ruins on either side, we're going to have a look at those in a minute, but the square tower on the right hand side, that was actually used as a gun emplacement during the English Civil War, 1642 to 48. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. It was that conflict between King and Parliament, King Charles I for the Royalists, Oliver Cromwell for the Parliamentarians. In fact, Chester was very much a Royalist city, took an absolute pounding from Cromwell's infantry and artillery based up here, where they were laying siege to the city of Chester 1644 and 45. Yeah, tough times for the city of Chester back in the English Civil War. Right, I think you're going to like this one. We've come around the back of John the Baptist Church. Have a look at these ruins, and almost like the story of Chester itself really, it's kind of recycling and reinventing itself. But If you look through the archway there, Greg's going to focus in. This was discovered in the 19th century by the sexton who was working here. It's a 13th century coffin, and you can see it's got the inscription "Dust to Dust" put into it. But he thought it was of that importance, he decided it might be a good idea to preserve it and actually erect it in the original abbey walls right there. Can you see that? 13th century coffin, dust to dust. Cool, eh? So still around the back of the church, we're just staying off the walls for a moment as we head down to the riverside. But before we do, I just wanted to point out the Queen's Park Bridge, built in 1925. It's got 23 there. It was actually opened at 25. Beautiful bridge. Go and have a look at that when you get to Riverside. But you also notice on the stanchions there, you've got 7 different coats of arms, and they are actually the first 7 Earls of Chester. So quite an important Queen's Park Bridge down there. Very pretty indeed. Before we head down these stairs to get to the riverside itself, I just wanted to point this out to you guys. It's beautiful. It's known as the Anchorite cell. It's part of the church, actually, John the Baptist Church, but originally its purpose was as a kind of refuge and a shelter for hermits and travelling monks and that sort of stuff. There is a bit of a legend behind it. It said that apparently one hermit was a certain King Harold, the Anglo-Saxon king that was defeated in 1066 by William the Conqueror. It'd be somewhat surprising because I think he'd have been about 400 years old if that had been the case, because this building dates from the 1400s, the Anchorite cell. And at last, down at the Groves, laid out in the 19th century, down by the riverside, the River Dee, flowing nicely by the bandstand, by Queen's Park Bridge. Really summer months, bustling hive of activity down here. People just strolling, promenading, people watching, buying a nice ice cream, or even possibly picking up one of the beautiful river cruises here, like on the Mark Twain or the Lady Diana. Again, a piece for your information. Down here we've actually got some very clean and free bathrooms. Utilise the Groves down at River Dee. So continuing on the riverside walk here, you get a great impression of these really quite imposing city walls behind me. Again, that red Cooper sandstone. I mean, this is pretty imposing, but some of them rise about 40 feet in height. Over here we've got the bridge, which was the original and sole crossing into Wales up until 1832, and you're quite interested to see the different size spans of the bridge. The reason for that is it was very difficult to find firm footings. In the foreground here we've got the weir, Hugh Lupus's weir. It was actually installed in the 11th century, can you believe that? Unbelievable. To feed and power his grain mills further downstream. Now, the other side of the bridge, on the other side of the bank, you might just be able to make out a small patch of green, and that's known as Edgar's Field. And legend has it that in 973 there's a man called King Edgar. Now, he was the first king of all England. He kind of unified all the Saxon tribes. He came up here to the port of Chester, as it was then, and he ordered 8 of the senior princes of the kingdom to row him upstream to the abbey where we were previously, that was formerly, now became John the Baptist Church, to pay homage. And he unified all the kingdoms. So essentially we probably had our first united kingdom, if you like. So that was King Edgar over in Edgar's Field as the sunlight glints across the River Dee. Right, we're going to pick up the wall walk at this point, actually, alongside the River Dee, outside the University of Chester. Good view of the bridge. But I wanted to point this out to you, actually. There is Edgar's Field, right there. So you can actually get to it, just walk across the bridge, turn right into the gardens, and lo and behold, right there you are. But you might be able to make out a rock outcrop in the middle, just below the church. In fact, there's quite an interesting original Roman shrine there to the goddess Minerva. And Minerva was a very important goddess to the Romans. She was the goddess of wisdom, hence Minerva and our wise old owl. And of course she was seen by the Roman army as a symbol of power. So the goddess Minerva's shrine in Edgar's Field, just on the other side of the River Dee. So we're going to take a little pause on the walls here, underneath the castle. In fact, just over the back there is where we started the tour, Victoria's Monument, outside County Hall and the Cheshire Regiment Museum. But you see, quite an imposing fortification, but the original fortification, this grassy mound here dating from pretty much shortly after 1066, and again another massively important date in English history. The only 2 occasions we've actually been overrun by foreigners. AD 43, the Romans, and 1066 by William the Conqueror and his Normans, French fellas. More of that in a minute, but a logistical point of view here, actually, we've got, well, we've actually parked today, the little Roodee car park and coach parking area, but we are, despite being a beautiful sunny day, we are in February. It's pretty busy, it's almost full, so you can imagine what this is going to be like in the height of summer. My recommendation would be to get here early. An all-day ticket's actually relatively reasonable for a city centre parking. It's £5.80, but you might be more interested in taking one of the 2 park and rides on the outside of town. So it's a £2 return ticket, and kids travel free, which is a pretty nice thing to do. But say this is here. They do have change facilities here. By the summer, I think they will be programmed for cards, and also, more importantly, free clean bathrooms right down there at the Roodee coach park. Moving on from the little Roodee parking area, we come to the Roodee itself, Chester Racecourse. So called because of a stone cross that can still be seen today. The Rood is a cross, and the D was a little island, which you can just come into view over there now. But we've got some great views of Chester Racecourse itself. It's probably the oldest in England, and the great race, the Cheshire Vase, is run here during flat season. Fine views indeed. But it's really difficult to imagine that this really was a thriving and bustling harbour, really from Roman times until the harbour just silted up because of lack of use, probably by the mid-17th century. And if you look around, you will actually see evidence of the harbour walls, and particularly when we get further down the walls, down towards Watergate. Right, so we come all the way down past the Roodee, the race course, all the way down over Watergate, all the way down past the infirmary and the high school, and we come to the corner at Bone Wardlesthorne's Tower. And right here, but most importantly, we are looking out at what is called the Water Tower. Right here. Now this used to be the tower that kind of protected the entrance to the harbour until the whole thing started really silting up by the 15th century. And that was then became a marsh, and eventually just the land reclaimed itself, really. But there was Water Tower once upon a time to actually protect the ancient Roman harbour. The tower itself dates from about 1322. So that's Water Tower, Bone Wardlesthorne's Tower. I've got a little another one of these little medieval watchtowers for you here on the walls. This is known as Goblin Tower. It's also referred to as Pembertons Parlour, after John Pemberton, the mayor here in Chester in the 18th century. It was like a little rest stop for the ladies and gents who used to like to promenade and take a stroll and take the air along Chester Wall. So Goblin Tower, Pembertons Parlour. So we come up to possibly one of the highest points of the walls, actually. This is what's called Morgan's Mount, and it was a cannon gun emplacement during the English Civil War. It's named after Sergeant Morgan, who manned this huge cannon operating and defending the city walls from parliamentarian troops outside the city wall. So good views as well from the distant Welsh hills over there. So this is Morgan's Mount. Ooh, little something that caught my eye here above Edlingham buildings. You'll notice in the brickwork between the windows these grey diamonds. These are very distinctive, and if you're wandering around Chester, keep your eyes open for these, because this means something. Now, the landowner around here, the Grosvenor family, you've probably heard me mention the Grosvenor a couple of times, but the Dukes of Westminster are the Grosvenor family, and their country estate is here just outside the city at Eaton Hall. But this signifies Grosvenor family property. The Grey Diamonds, you can actually do the Grey Diamond Trail, I believe. Yeah, Gerald Grosvenor is the current Duke of Westminster, and I think I'm right in saying that he is, aside from the Queen, is the richest landowner in the country, Gerald Grosvenor. A lot of links to London, for example, Grosvenor Square, Grosvenor Place. As I say, the country estate here is Eaton Hall. Of course, you've got Eaton Square, Eaton Place in London as well, all again Grosvenor property. So the Grey Diamonds, Duke of Westminster. Right, that's it. So we've moved up from Watergate all the way up to Northgate, where the wall tour started. So our good friends here, Ratty and Fish, outside the jail. And this is where we're going to leave the walls at Northgate, where we got on, and we're going to head down towards the Cathedral. Good, so we've now moved back into town. We've plotted up outside the Cathedral, beautiful, dedicated to Christ and the Blessed Virgin Mary, formerly St Werburgh's. St Werburgh, patron saint of Chester. There's been a religious site on here since the 8th century. 1541, I think it was, King Henry VIII, he made Chester a bishopric, a city, hence the cathedral. Fantastic visit, actually. So it's free entry, although a kind of £3 suggested donation to go in there, but it's well worth it. It's absolutely stunning. A great refectory restaurant in there, stained glass to die for, old and new. A Lady Chapel. Probably the most standout thing actually in the cathedral are these 14th century misericors, these ornately carved choir stalls, absolutely breathtaking. So some were made out of this, again, this Cooper red sandstone. In fact, beautiful as it is, it erodes through the elements, wind and rain. In fact, I believe Chester is now the most refurbished cathedral in the country. So behind the cathedral into St Werburgh Street, I wanted to point this out actually in the corner. It's very nice. The campanile there, that's actually the separate bell tower for the cathedral. It's called Addleton's Tower after the rector here. Built in the 70s, and it holds the 12 bells, all named after particular saints relevant to Chester. It's not unique. The only other campanile is at Chichester, which dates from the 15th century. So that's designed to look like a Roman watchtower as well. So that's the Addleton's Tower, bell tower for Chester Cathedral. So we're going to cut down through Godstall Lane over there, very quirky little stores and shops down. That'll take us out onto Eastgate for some more quirky things to find. Let's go. Alright, so back onto Eastgate we are, underneath the clock. Beautiful, the second most photographed clock in the country. But I wanted to bring your attention to this, the outside the HSBC Bank. You'll notice the crest above the doorway. It's the original crest for the Grosvenor family. Remember, Dukes of Westminster, the Cheshire Wheat Sheaf in the middle. Above the doorway itself, again, you've got the crest of the County of Cheshire, the 3 wheat chiefs on the blue background, of course, the crest of the city of Chester. And above the windows on the right hand side, you've got 12 crests. 11 of those are the counties of Wales. I'm not sure which the 12th one is, but it's 11 counties of Wales represented by those crests. Above the HSBC Bank on Eastgate Street. On our way back up Eastgate Street towards the Market Cross, but I couldn't stop without passing this. We've got to show you this. If we look above Pike's the Jewellers, you're going to see a crown with a gauntlet hanging down there. The legend of that is the gauntlet was thrown down for anybody disputing the succession to the throne. Particularly the Prince of Wales is the heir to the throne of England, and the Earl of Chester. So the royal gauntlet being thrown down for that succession. Just across the way actually, I'm about to see the Boot Inn, ye old Booty Inn, established 1643. A good old drinking establishment for the royalist troops who were sieged here in 1645.
Well, we just made it back to the Market Cross, and look who we found. He wasn't skiing in Austria after all. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, the incomparable, Chester's most handsome man, the world famous Mr. David Mitchell, Chester's Town Crier, and only his modesty exceeds his beauty.
Thank you, sir.
City of Chester has got it all! Amphitheatre, Roman walls, Tudor houses, Victorian mews, and a handsome town crier
right.
proclaiming the news. However, there is someone else in the city today who has taken it upon himself to spread Chester's fame. I don't like rivals. I have my own way of dealing with them. Oh, no. Sir, have a seat.
Oh no. Oh no.
I insist. Like to make you comfortable, sir?
Oh no, this is not going to end well.
There we go. Put your feet up.
The shame.
Just make sure we're staying for the duration.
Well, how long is this going to take? What have I done?
Ladies and gentlemen, the shops close at 5:30. I am going to release Rich at 6 o'clock. May God bless you all. God save the Queen.
Hurrah.
let's try that again. That wasn't loud enough. Fantastic applause. Make it sound like there's thousands of you. Okay, take two. May God bless you all. God save the Queen. Much better.
David, brilliant as usual. Right here, the Market Cross, Tuesday to Saturday. 12 o'clock.
12 noon.
What's unique about Chester?
Oh, this doesn't happen anywhere else. If you went to another town, you wouldn't necessarily see a town crier. You know, at 12 noon, Tuesday to Saturday, June to August, you can see the town crier here in Chester. And if you're really lucky, just like you can get put in the stocks.
Quite right, if you're real naughty. Right here, Market Cross, Watergate Street, Bridge Street, and Eastgate Street, right here. The one, the only, Mr. David Mitchell. If somebody wanted to book you for an event,
David at ChesterTownCriers.com.
David at ChesterTownCriers.com.
That's the key.
That's the key. All right. Pleasure, my man.
Thank you, sir.
Take care.
Thank you.
Well, lots of relief. As you can see, it's before 6 o'clock. David's finally let me out of the stocks for relatively good behaviour. So this now gives us an opportunity to really go and explore the rows. What Chester's famous for is these enclosed shopping mall walkways, if you like. So thanks, David. See you soon. I'd like to give you a little taste of what the rows of Chester are all about. These covered walkways, timbered, some wooden floors, some stone floors. Difficult to really age inside here because they were just recycling that wood and brick from previous set generations, as it were. But I say, walking through it, the taller guys might want to watch your head here. Caution, low headroom, but a fine view actually right the way down the quieter section of the roads. This is actually on Watergate Street, and some original 17th century merchants' houses. Just always look up and see if you can find the date as well. I've got one out here actually. Which one's he dated from? Well, this is a modern one, well, modernish, 1890, but one across to our right, I think, dates from the 1600s. But I always have a little wander down towards the original port. But, there you go, a little taster of the rows. All right, so we're back at the Market Cross, junction with Eastgate Street, Bridge Street, and of course Watergate Street, which would have taken you down to the port. This is kind of the main commercial highway back in the day. We've got some splendid merchant houses down that way, but as we do a pan before we go, is again, apart from the walls and the Roman history, this is what Chester's all about, these beautiful covered walkways known as the rows, elegant shops and boutiques. Been here really since the 16th century, massively refurbished during the 19th century. Great views down Eastgate Street. It's in, of course, the Victoria clock over Eastgate Bridge itself. So we're going to take a little roll back down Bridge Street to pick up the junction there of Bridge Street by Newgate. We're kind of winding things up now really. We've progressed down from the Market Cross to the bottom of Bridge Street. You might recall the three old arches, allegedly the oldest shop front in the country, dating from 1274. What we're going to do actually, you see the beautiful timbered building at the end there, that's the fantastic Falcon pub, well worth a look in actually. You know what I'm saying, getting that time of day, isn't it? But yeah, so we'll be hooking a right down there, back down Grosvenor Street, past the Grosvenor Museum, down towards County Hall, and of course back to the car. Well, here we are, end of the tour really. Final thing to point out really is the Grosvenor Bridge, built in 1832, and it was actually, I believe, the largest single span bridge of its time. Anyway, as I say, back in the parking area, that's the end of the tour. Look, I hope you enjoyed it, or more importantly, found it useful. As in any other city, there's a lot more to Chester in and around the city, but I feel that we've given you a pretty comprehensive insight to the most important and interesting sites here in this remarkable walled city that is Chester. So thanks very much. I've been Rich Jones, the Tour Guide's Travel Guide. You can follow us on the website, YouTube, Facebook and other social media for upcoming destinations and updated information. Cheers.